Hello everybody. So Sunday afternoon, beautiful day, and I've prepared something for you, tips and techniques, kind of a video, and I'm calling it Ikebana inspired wood block structure. And as you can see, I think you saw in the kind of the picture, sort of the ad for it ahead of time, that there were two blocks, wood blocks like this. There's this one, and there's also this one that I had just started, and that I wanted to share with you how the mechanics of this really works. And so really the basic thing that I really want to share with you is first of all, what is Ikebana to you? And for most of you, or some of you who have taken Ikebana and know all sort of principles, all of its teaching and the discipline that's involved, will certainly know what that is in the real world of Ikebana. But Ikebana is not necessarily, the discipline behind it is not always known to everyone, but it's often very much admired. And what it really is a very simplistic but very meaningful, deep, nature-inspired design that often has three main insertions that really defines the character of that design. And the mechanic often is like a dish, low dish, with a kenzan, which is like the pin frog, and into it you will design the three main components, the heaven, man, earth. And so that defines the different levels, different heights. Heaven being the highest and the tallest and reaching up to the sky. And then man is who is the world that surround underneath on earth. And then earth is the lowest, the character of the planet itself. And so by defining those 3 points, it really gives you the vision of what the world really is, what the universe really is for us. And so it's really distilling down what actually happens on Earth in an arrangement defining those three components. So it is a very minimal kind of a design that is quite often very line-oriented. The stems are very important. Branches are important because that defines the flow, the visual flow of the design, and the character, defines the character of the material that you're using. And so to be a little bit more simplistic, and for instance, coming from Japan, born in Japan, but raised almost all my life in North America, have seen sort of the both side of things, how the Japanese look at Ikebana and revere it, and the reverence behind it, and also what the world, the non-Ikebana people, how they see it, and see it as a beautiful form of art, and wondering if they can, in fact, learn how to do that, and what that would look like when you do. So, so this is like really an Ikebana inspired look, and it's built on a wood block. And this is an example of what I'm really wanting to show you, is to have established already kind of lines that define sort of Ikebana inspired design. I mean, this may look like it a little bit because there's heaven, man, and earth, like the three different levels in these two branches. And then this is where we go to the western side, mechanics that kind of mimics that kind of a feel and keeps you in that kind of a feel, because you established it. So you can't overdo it with flowers because you've established that Ikebana inspired look. And so the mechanic here is this, based in this wood block. This is really actually a 4x4 wood fencing. And usually when you buy it at, Home Depot or what have you, your home supply store, they're usually really heavy because it's not being kiln dry. Nice heavy block that you get out of it. This is starting to dry because I've had it for quite some time, but using it on a vertical and using this as the main plane from which the design emerges, what I've done is create these two components that already defines a feeling of the minimalistic kind of a designing that Ikebana might be. But what I've done in the mechanic in itself, where the flowers will go, is to have a cluster of water tubes that's being set in place in between these two lines that is contained within a chicken wire egg. And so that's being sort of sandwiched between these two lines that's already in the block. And then that then holds the individual upright water tube into which you'll design. And so what is this design or this kind of mechanic kind of relevant? How can it be useful to you? It's useful to you as perhaps a rental item or just an event item where you don't have a huge budget, but you want to have create some certain presence with size. And this is where often the Ikebana inspired design comes in actually very handy, because usually it can be much bigger than your usual sort of round kind of shape arrangement. It's really more linear. So it defines a space with line. And so with line, you create the outer silhouette, and into it, you will then put in your three main components of flowers. So what this does is already have a built-in look into which you can put just a few things, and you have something that looks really viable, that is very artsy, very has that Ikebana influence to it. It has a sort of a certain cultural kind of built-in appreciation that could be very appealing to your customer or whomever you could be doing this work for. But it makes the actual execution of flowering very, very simple, because a lot of it is already built into this structure. So what I've done here is I've drilled holes in a certain angle that creates this kind of cradle right here with these two branches. So those have been drilled in, and that's why I have the drill and drill bit here, because that's really the way you start this particular design, is that you have to position your where those branches go and drill a hole, angle it, drill a hole a little bit bigger than you would normally for a tight fit, unless you're really a perfect craftsman, then you can do this so well. But I'm not quite that. You know, I'm kind of a DIY kind of a craftsman. So I'm going to drill a hole that's a little bit bigger, but yet somewhat snug, so that I can then slip it in with the hot glue gun, so that melting in the glue to fill in that little extra space. And then actually I had a great experience when I actually did a workshop, and I had my friend Jorge Uribe, who was my assistant at the time, and he was helping me do this. And what he did was, over that glue, the hot glue or Oasis glue, he actually sprinkled back in a little bit of the sawdust that came out of that hole, and that kind of sealed it up, and it looks really, really great. So I really have appreciated that little input that he helped me with at that point. So that way then I have these two outer pieces, that beautiful line, and these are, by the way, dried fasciated willow. They have such beautiful character to it in itself, and so it's not going to take a lot of other flowers to make this design shine. So that's how I started with, and I'm just going to show you right here with this other piece. So what I want to say is that the placement of the line itself defines the design. By that is that in this particular arrangement, unlike this one, which is very upright, so this would be like an Ikebana upright, this would be like a little bit more like Ikebana slanting style, because there's that. And I did take Ikebana for multiple lessons. You know, I was always too busy as a florist to take a full-time Ikebana weekly course, but I did attend it just because so many people said, oh my gosh, you must have taken Ikebana. And it felt embarrassing for me to have not to be able to have that experience. So I did take Ikebana and have been an astute student of the study of Ikebana. So in doing so, I found out that there's, you know, the upright, the slanting, and then sort of flowing downwards, or that there's multiple kind of versions. And so what I'm saying is, you can also build a design, the Ikebana-inspired design, a basic silhouette that is a little bit lower and more spreading or more horizontal. It's up to you to create what that is, because that's what you start with. So instead of designing into foam or designing into things to create that, I'm actually designing the wood drilled right into the block, so it's already built in. So I have this kind of silhouette available to me, multiple blocks of it, so that I could put it together as a multiple spread over a buffet, and then just pop in the flowers afterwards, because it's already designed, that's half built. So with this one, I just wanted to show you that here's how it goes. Like, I drilled a hole into the side there, and it kind of locks into place. Now, because of that obtrusive sort of nature of this particular branch that might be more difficult to store than the upright, I might not glue this in. I might just have that as I need it to fit in when I need it, so I could store it much, much tighter. when I put this away. But the other thing I might show you is this one here. The way this one goes in, it sort of lays sideways. So obviously, if this were a block of foam, you would insert it to the side of the brick. But I can't do that with wood. And if I go that way into it, it's too shallow and it's a precarious hole to drill. So what I did was actually take a big chunk, actually end of this, and drill the hole into the top block. And then I actually added this side piece in and actually pierced it together by drilling a hole through the two and glue that down so that I can get that much more lazy piece of wood angling in that way. So that's kind of how I did it. And I just wanted to share that with you so that you know that anything and everything is possible when you start to play with this kind of building. And so I'm just going to clip that away so that that's gone. And when you have this sort of a more lazier kind of a feel to it, this mechanic that I have here versus this upright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the chicken wire egg that I made, and I'm going to place this across because this is going to be what is going to hold the water tubes. Because basically the flowers that you want to use in here are all going to be placed with water tubes. So first I'm going to start out by putting this tied into place with a bind wire to these three branches, the components that I've already built in to this wood block. So I'm going to just do that first. This is a little bit awkward because it is very, very expansive. It's rather big in a certain way. And I'm just wondering if this is even possible. Did I glue it all down so I can't get this in? No, maybe what I need to do is go for a longer piece and go up a little bit higher, like this. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that down. So bind wire it together. It's really about securing everything down. And this one here doesn't quite reach, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it together so that it's also tied, because as you remember, I did not glue that in, so I don't want that to slip out. So I'm going to just go ahead and tie that into place. So it's just like that. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is show you how I actually then put these water tubes in and how this sits nice and rigid in this spot, so it doesn't roll if it should get a little loose. So what I have is actually holes that I drilled just exactly the size of these bamboo skewer, and I have 5 holes drilled in there already. So there's one right there. Let's see. Here's another one. So it's like a pegboard. And there's another one. Now I could go ahead and actually have that glued in or not, because maybe you might want to be able to take it apart and reassemble it so that it's a little bit like Lego, or you know, that kind of a structure building concept. I know I have another one right there, but it has a chicken wire right above it. There we go. So there's another one. There's another one right there. Let's get that in as well. There. So this is what I have, and this is important because this kind of keeps things in place so that it has the verticality that actually the water tube, sometimes it's nice to have it slide down alongside something. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and just tie it to the chicken wire, because this is just extra security, that it has that little bit more for the water tube to kind of hang on to, so it doesn't slide around or rock around. So I'm going to just do that all the way around. It is possible to also add a little bit of U-glue, half a U-glue dash, to make this bond a little bit tighter if you like. But it's actually optional. I don't think you absolutely have to in this case, if you tie it down nice and tight. So I'm going to do that with every one of these so that it's all in place. and it gives you that vertical grid for the water tube to be supported, in addition to the cell, each cell, the opening that is provided by the chicken wire itself. It's always good to kind of lean to the side of caution, because with mechanics, you want to make sure that absolutely nothing falls apart. So after that, what I'm going to do is just simply clip these off with my end cutter, twist and clip so that it's tightened and also clipped at the same time. It's really a good one-action kind of mechanical execution. So I'm going to do that all the way around so that it's nice and clean. The mechanic is finessed, which I think is really important. I mean, first of all, you want to make sure it works, but second of all, you want to make sure that the finish, even though this is still the underlying mechanics underneath, but it still looks really good and clean to start. I think it's just a good practice to be really finessing everything that you do. So what I want to do after that is actually take away this extra. Don't cut too short that tie would slip out, but high enough so that it doesn't go anywhere beyond that. So this way, what you have is actually mechanics that's really, really solid. You can tell that is so and that is so. It's completely attached to that wood block. And so no matter what you do from here on, whatever material that you attach to, it's not going to fall off of that block because the mechanic is being placed beautifully and very solid. So what you're going to do now is just go in here and put in these water tubes. And you can see that it's a little bit all over the place because the chicken wire, the hole itself, is much bigger than the and that's a reason why sometimes a spot like this where you can actually penetrate the second hole is really, really important. But some of these other ones, I mean, what you can do is just squeeze around it so that it's a little bit tighter. So this is what I do after the fact, that you squeeze around it so it's just a little bit tighter. It pulls it up a little bit. So I'm going to do that so that it stands up straighter. But you can tell that vertical bamboo skewer does really help in keeping some of this a little bit tighter because it gives it less opportunity for it to slide around. So maybe it's something like this. And yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if they were perfectly vertical, but does it really matter? No, it doesn't really matter because it's all underneath. It's mechanics underneath. So that's kind of what that looks like right there. So I'm just going to show you how then I might work with this further. So the next thing I have got is actually Middlino extender. I have a couple of them. And I'm just going to use this just to show you. And this could be any color. It could be more in the brown tone to go with this. Or like what I have is in a green tone so that whatever greenery, the foliages that I use will start to blend with it. So I'm going to sort of work this through and start to attach some of this together.
I was just going to jump in and say we have a few people from all over saying hello. Luis from Mexico.
What? Wow, that's
Keenan
awesome.
said hello. He also watched the Hefner wedding celebration, and it was awesome.
Oh,
so
great.
thank you
Fantastic.
Pratibha says thanks for teaching new techniques. And James Malloy says hello again from Virginia.
Excellent.
We also
hello,
have Bruno saying bonjour. T'es sûr qu'il n'y a pas de traduction en français? I believe he's a little wish that there was a translation in French. So we'll work on that. Maybe there's a feature that we can do that for you. So thank you for joining us. I'll just mention that I'm here in the background. So if you have any questions at any point during the live stream, feel free to ask in the chat, and I will relay those to Hitomi.
Yes, by all means, please ask questions because that's how you get to really know exactly what's going on, I'm always very willing to share what that is. So please do ask questions whenever you have any query. So basically what I'm doing is just attaching this to create more of a structure that allows me to lean into it to add the final floral finishing, whether it's a foliages or flowers. But I'm also making it so that, as I often do, and I really truly believe in this kind of concept of structuring that really eventually blends into the vine or what have you that we're going to use in this design. The difference between this Ikebana-inspired structure versus, say, Ikebana is that really just some of the main lines that I've formed already, as you can see here, has a feeling of how sometimes the Ikebana designs appear, to any eye who may not be always completely familiar with the whole idea of Ikebana. But if you've seen any pictures, examples of Ikebana, you always know that the linear element is one of the most important part of it. Branches, vines, but thicker vines that hold itself. But it's not always known to be really soft and romantic, or that it has any other feel than to impart the feeling of nature. That's really its sole purpose. And so, but yet, as all of our designs often are, it is about translating nature. And so in this particular piece, even though, like I say, it's Ikebana inspired, so line-wise, I'm kind of going with lines that feel very fluid and very, very linear. What I'm trying to do is make it so that I can work with some soft vines that will connect this Middlino extender that is sort of the extra additional linear flow, and make it into part of my much more westernized Ikebana, so that it has a little bit more component that may have a little and resonates a little bit more strongly with bigger sort of the mass market. Because I think, even for those who are avid designers and following Ikebana discipline, we often find that a lot of people don't quite understand it. And I think whenever you do a design that helps make that connection, I think it's really something that's worth doing. At least it is for me as a teacher of design just in general. I want people to know more about, and rather than people making judgment of what they think about it, I want them to be a more informed opinion on things. So what I've done, and you can see this right here, I'm going to turn it around, so that I've created with this Middlino extender. There were two of them. Actually, one was an extender and the other one was the Middlino wire vine, so that they have the little soft tips on the end, as this is, that has the same feel as a lot of the live vines. And when I do this, then it helps start to connect this into a bigger kind of composition into which the flowers can be placed, and also gives it a little bit more extra body for some flowers to rest in between, or peek in between, or flow out of, or we can actually even place material underneath to make it stay down. It helps you control a little bit the direction of the flowers that you're going to use. So that's kind of basically what I've done here. And then in addition to that, what I want to do is actually take a little bit of vine, because that's kind of always been my passion, is to connect the real growing material to the structure building. I think that's one of the things that's hardest for some of those people who's never gotten into structure. Why would I need structure when I have flowers that you put, flower on top of each other and around, and filler and fuller and fuller, and it's so beautiful? There's a certain point in every career of a florist where you want to get a little bit past what the sort of ordinary practice is, because you want to try making something that's a little bit different and a little bit new. And so this is where the structure comes in, because structure allows you to create a template and then a silhouette with that template to create a design that is really honestly created by you and your vision.
Okay, we have a couple questions.
Yes.
First, Fertiba is asking, which branches are you using to attach to the wooden block and how?
Okay, so yeah, the branch that I've used is one of my absolute favorite. It's fasciated willow. What it is it's a willow branch. It's a variety. It's it's Sekie. Sekie is the variety. It's a fasciated willow. So it's like a pussy willow, but it actually has a certain kind of a disease that makes it deformed. And so then it flattens some of that, usually the round stem, it actually flattens it and create these wonderful shapes. And so it's one of the material I truly love very much because it has so much character. And they're usually available fresh in spring when all the other pussy willows are out there. And you know, I usually get some every year because I love them so much. And they hold up beautifully, fresh for quite some time. And then furthermore, after I finish using it fresh, they dry beautifully. And that's what they are, is dried fasciated willow. Fasciated is F-A-S-C-I-A-T-E-D. So these are fasciation when it's sort of gotten flattened and are a little bit diseased and distorted. So that's what it is. And so what I've done is actually drilled them into the wood block. So there's holes drilled into the block so that it's almost like instead of designing into foam, pretend this is foam, because it's wood block, I'm drilling it. So it's because this is permanent material now that it's dried, I'm able to use it as dried material that then this structure will stay permanent and I can use it over and over again. And because of the fact that with a wood block and it makes a nice base, it makes it possible for me to use this just using the flowers into the water tube area, and the rest of it is already pre-built so that I can use it over and over again. I'm really a real, I love the ability to create a structure that's very useful, that it's attractive enough for me to want to use it over and over again. And this is really the trick. When you have something like that, then you're going to get the mileage out of it enough time that it's worthwhile for you to take the time to build such a thing. Because as a retail florist, I know a lot of people say, well, I don't have time for that. It takes too long. But the thing is, my point is, yeah, it takes a little longer, but if you're able to sell this look multiple times by renting this structure and using it over and over, because the designing with flowers in it is very cost effective because you only have like 5 tubes or 6 tubes to design into, so you're not going to overstuff it ever. And it's going to be this always this beautiful, minimal, sort of minimalist kind of a design that could be very attractive in say for instance like a corporate kind of a scenario, like a weekly corporate design. If you have this one.
Okay, there was another question that I want to ask before you get too far into this. James Malloy was asking, are you being intuitive of where you put the Milino extenders, and do you think about weight and shape at this point?
Oh, absolutely. And as with any design, you have to be thinking through all that before you commit to the final decision on exactly where it's going to, where things are going to go. And you're also always balancing it out, even though balance is not really a big concern for me right now, especially with this one, because this one is an upright. And if I if I don't go too far out to one side or too far out the other side, what then could throw off the balance on this one, it's not likely to happen with this one because it's basically a much more upright kind of an arrangement with a lot of sort of just beautiful curvilinear flow. So in this one, the main concern for me, the balance, is more front to back so that I don't go too far out to the back or too far out to the front, because that might make it tipsy this way or that way. But because of the fact that it's over the wood block, I want to keep it mostly, just a little bit outside of it and not go too far out. But mind you, the more flowers you place in here that has weight, you have ability to go farther out. So it is possible, even with this particular design that I'm starting right here, that if I, for instance, have like king protea, and I want to put the king protea right in here, or right smack in the middle, to weigh that down really, really, so it's heavy in the middle, I could very well take a piece of like a branch or a big foliage, maybe such as hala, and visually and also mechanically throw this way out here because it has a visual weight of that the protea. So you're always going to be minding the balance for sure, because visual balance and physical balance is very important. But yeah, as I'm actually creating this, I'm also looking at this goes to the back, but then I came out forward a little bit more because that's sort of the counterbalance. You want that physical balance front to back as well as side to side. What I like about this one is this could be the front for me, like right here, and you're seeing it now right like that, or it could be the other way around. I love that. And what's really great about any design that has line like this weaving through, actually we're finding that more and more that when you design into this versus when you don't have the line and you're just designing a mass of flowers, you see more depth because you see the line cross in front of or behind the line that makes you feel the depth more. And as you know, especially when you're creating for photography, photography foreshortens the depth. And so when you have just flower on flower on flower, it looks like it could be a lot flatter than it truly is because there's no gauge that tell you the actual distance between front and back. In this one, you can tell the distance from front to back like this. And so that when I place a flower here, you know that it's behind this line, or that when I place it here, you know it's at the back of the last line. So that line crossing in front of it, what you see from the front or from the side or from the back, gives you a much better sense of depth in the design, even in photography, which is really a real plus because photography does often kill the beautiful depth that you created in the design. So now, go ahead.
Jody Kennedy is asking, how did you create the tiny tendrils on your Middlino extender vine? Looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? I love that. It's one of my things that I really enjoy doing. Actually, there's a video that I created that on YouTube that you can go to, and it's one that is the Middlino wire vine. Because not to be mistaken for the Middlino extender, because it has different amount of the different component that's in it. And what it is actually one piece of Middlino, one length of Middlino with extended aluminum wire or diamond wire that's longer than that particular piece of Middlino, so that it actually goes to where there's two pieces, the wire Middlino through the middle, and then the Middlino expires and it goes straight to just the wire, the aluminum wire. And then it goes to an extended by a piece of the U-glue dash. I just put a U-glue dash on the end of the aluminum wire and put double-ended, like a V of metallic wire, which is the thinner spool wire. So you're going from thick in the middle, 2-layer, to one layer of wire, and then to thinner than that with a double-ended metallic wire. And then I go and wrap that whole thing so that you have that gradation from the thickest to the thinnest to the end. So that's why you get that real fine kind of tendril-like feel right here that mimics a lot of what's going on with these tendrils, because that's what it's all about. And it's able to also catch different, like if I want this to stay in place there, I can just wrap around there so it doesn't fling out. Like it just catches things just as a real tendril does. So mechanically, it's really a wonderful tool to to be able to shape your design just the way you want. What I want to do with a lot of my mechanics is replicate what happens in nature by creating a man-made structure that has the attributes of the real natural material. And by doing so, I can use all the features that actually grabs and holds in design because, as you know, those tendrils, and that's why I like to expose the actual tendrils of these vines as well, instead of having all the leaves on it. I expose it because this in itself, and I'm just going to show you, like for instance, if I have a piece of material such as this, Calocephalus, if I have this and I want this to stay down, like and down low in here, I can actually allow this tendril to wrap around it so that it stays right there, so that it has that beautiful curve that's built in by nature, by that vine. And that's what I'm exactly mimicking with these as well, is that it's a man-made version of it. So if I want a stem here, and I'm just going to do this just for a moment. If I want to put this stem here, and I want it to be like not standing up like this, but I want it to be here, then I can go and wrap this around so that, and I can actually make this kind of so that the face of it stays up a little bit more. But I can make it do what I want. And then if I want it to face this way, then I can U-glue on this, and this attaches to this, so it stays right there instead of flinging back to where it was. So, you know, I'm using what nature has provided that does that for real in nature, and mimicking that special effect that nature does so well by making these handmade kind of a mechanic that helps control that. So this is really what it becomes. And so as far as flowers go, you know, the thing is you always have this, the wood structure, you know, the wood block, the fasciated willow, and then the Middle-Lino extender that's already shaped. That can stay in place. The vine itself, this one here, and this is passion vine that's been stripped so that you still see the growing tips. And I always want to keep the growing tip with the real green on the tip as much as possible. But I've had these vines here, and I've used it multiple times for over a month. So, you know, I collect vines and keep it pliable and fresh as long as I can, and use it as a fresh into structure like this so that it helps transition from the man-made to the natural, so that it reads much better in the final end design. So what I want to do with this one, I think, is I'm going to go with this stunning piece of, is this the one? No, maybe the other one. So I have these, you know, it's been a fun kind of journey trying to see how some of these material, how they hold up. This one here is actually Anthurium
HEI.
HEI, thank you. Even Colin knows what that name is. That's pretty good. You're getting to be a good horticulturalist hanging out with a crazy designer mom. But anyway, so here it is. So it's rather large, but it's really stunning. And let's see if we can incorporate this. This might be crazy. You know, maybe it worked better when I was just playing with it earlier. But what I want to do is make it so that it stays upward and then kind of draping a little. So then I want to obviously add and tie to a Middle-Lino extender back here so it stays in place exactly where I want it to go. It might be a crazy idea because it's so large. But sometimes with a structure like this is not about necessarily designing it pretty. It's about using just few material to create stunning. And that's really more the purpose of this, as is really a lot of Ikebana is. It's meant to be a stunning example of a certain study of design that's really outstanding. So I'm thinking something like this. The positioning is a little bit different than what I had in mind, so I'm having to kind of deal with it right now. But I want it to be kind of the star of this show, if I can. So maybe something like this. And then maybe I'm going to use the this one here. And this one here, the Guzmania. I have had this for over a month as well. And sometimes it's been water and sometimes it hasn't. But it's been fabulous. So I may have that sort of coming out of it like that, maybe a little bit like that. I may have anthurium, like I say. So I may stick that in there as I had before, and I think I showed you how I might want it. So I want it to kind of come forward and sort of flow into where I had shown you earlier how to tie into a spot. And I will do so right here and use this little tendril-like effect to make it so that that's part of the design. I don't know if this is going to even work. We'll see. We'll see how it does or not. It's an adventure. So it's something like this. That's kind of interesting. Maybe I'm going to have another one of these. Let's see. Where is it going to go? Is it going to be coming out from the side so that it sort of peeks out in another way? Yeah, maybe so. Maybe a little bit shorter. These kind of designing live and just on the spot is difficult because you have an idea, but you haven't tried it yet, so you don't really know if it's going to work or not. It's kind of risky, but risky is also fun. And you learn a lot in the process. You know, a lot of times we're sometimes afraid to try stuff, lest, you know, what would other people think? That's always the big question. What would they think? I mean, did they think I'm kind of weird? But let it be so. I guess I've had enough years of people looking at what I do and question it anyway, so this is certainly no different. And I'm kind of enjoying it, actually, right at the moment. So I'm going to pull this down and actually use a U-glue so that it actually forms kind of a little bit of a groove so that it's not so flat, because then maybe it resonates a little bit better, the shape of this. We'll see how that works. It's really hard for you to see what I'm doing exactly right at the moment, but you'll see in a minute. So that, okay, so this is what I'm doing right here. So that I'm creating kind of a groove. And so that this is being brought in, this is being brought in. This, I think I want to pull this back just a little bit more, back into there, so it leans back a little bit. What do I do on the back side? Of course, I need to think about that as well, so that there's back side to this design a little bit. That's kind of odd. It's going a little different direction. I want it to be a little bit more leaning to that side. Yeah, I'm kind of getting into a territory that's of a little bit uncomfortable. It's kind of strange, but it's okay. Okay, so on the back side, just because it needs some more weight, perhaps we need to have multiple layer of greenery. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Monstera to the back side. I'll show you that in a minute. That, and also a little bit upward. So that it may have something like this on the back side. And perhaps because I have another one of these, maybe that becomes one of the feature that brings your eye to the back as well. Maybe a little bit shorter, so it's not competing with the height of the other. Wow, is it ever difficult to justify what I'm doing when I've not done it before? But you can see how that works. I think that looks really quite stunning in itself. I'm just looking at actually the screen to see what it looks like from that side. And this side has a very interesting twist. This one here, I need to go and bring it up a little bit further up so that it's a little bit more centered. Yeah, there we go. So that it's something like this. And then from here, It's just about filling a little bit of mechanics, really, actually, right now. So what I'm going to do is maybe take a little bit of, and this is not exactly the material you might want to choose because of the difference of, mostly tropicals, and this is really scented geranium, but it actually just helps fill the gap. It just gives you texture enough that kind of helps at the base so that the mechanics is somewhat covered. And that's kind of all I'm looking to do with this material is just fussy texture. So I'm going to go ahead and use that, most of which are in the water tube and some of which are not. They're just in the chicken wire. But it helps cover up the mechanics somewhat. And what I'm also going to do is actually see if I can work this in. This is actually off of an echeveria that I have that's really stunning. And so I cut that, so maybe I might want to use that in here. Another risky move, I must say, for not doing it, testing it in advance. But I think it's possible because I have the extender to attach to in addition to the tube. Well, the tube is actually doing a very nice job. But just to ensure that adhesion, that connection, I'm going to go ahead and add this bind wire.
We have a question from
well.
Luis. He's asking, in this type of design, is it necessary to cover the mechanic?
Well, that's a very good point because, as you know, Ikebana, and this is just really a faux Ikebana, or I'd like to say just inspired by Ikebana, but they use kenzan, they use kubari, sticks, etc., and that's not their forte. They cover it some, but most of it is exposed. If you've seen any Ikebana at all with a kenzan, you can usually often see the kenzan. That's just the way it is. But translated to North America, and especially in the world of floristry, that's always the biggest obstacle to convince people of what that is. To be able for me to be able to say, well, it's just the way they do it. That's the way they do it. But to teach that in floristry is another thing, because we're always very mindful of mechanics. Because that's really part of our profession, to make sure that the mechanics are covered, and it shows that you have good understanding of the process when you take the time to cover the mechanics. And we know that it's a valued thing. So in the context of what we're doing as florists, I think it's very important that the mechanics is covered as well as possible, because I think that then resonates more with more people in the business of flowers. So I'm doing that a little bit at the moment, just to make sure that some of the mechanics is covered. And when you're doing this design, by the way, if it's for an event, obviously, whether all of this is in water or not is less important, because I can tell you right now, every material that I've used so far, maybe short of this final finish of the scented geranium, but all of the other material, anthurium, the anthurium veitchii, this has been actually out of water for almost a month, and it's still holding up. So that means that if I'm going to do this for an evening, I will not even put it in water. It's not necessary. The bromeliad, the guzmania right here, these two, they are really good out of water, so they may not need to be in water at all. However, if you supply water, it's going to last a lot better, and it will not brown later on. Monstera does have some, there's a wear and tear on Monstera. If out of water, I would say it lasts 2 to 3 days before it starts to yellow a little bit, and you'll start to see that discoloration that will indicate that it's out of water. But again, if it's an installation for an event or party, you don't need water. So the only time that something like this in a corporate setting, like a weekly design for a corporate company, I mean, I think this is stunning. I mean, it's stunning because it's got stunning material. That's part of our magic, is that we bring to our consumers, to our places, for people to view something that they've never seen before. Like, what is that? Anytime you use material such as this, it's going to get attention. And you're going to be marked as a person that brings this magic to their company or to their home or what have you. So depending on what that is, and if it's a corporate account and we're doing this as a weekly, what you need to do is to test out in advance how much some of this material will last. If it will last 5 days, from Monday to Friday, without water, then you don't need water. But if you put something in there, like say like dahlias or roses or some of the other things that does have some issue beyond 3 or 4 days, then you want to put the water. That's the reason why I have water tube in there, to make sure that the flowers that need water will have water. And the key thing that's really important whenever you do that kind of an installation that requires that water to be replenished is that you supply them with this water bottle. And I really do think that some of those receptionists that sits out at that counter and see people and welcome people every day, answer questions every day, they're not the best ones to water plants that's in a vase that they can't see whether it needs water or not. They're not diligent about that, but they're diligent about this toy. That does it need water today? Does it need water today? I think you give them this toy and they will look after this plant, or the water level in these water tubes. So I think this is kind of how I see it. And so with this one, and if you have this one.
James has another question.
Yes, a question.
He asks, when you started the beautiful organic lines, were you always designing around that extraordinary leaf, that heavy vertical line?
Oh, absolutely. Because that is the focal emphasis area. And I say focal emphasis, one of the things that I teach elements and principles of design kind of as I see it. And as I see it, it has moved from the focal point, which used to be right here where everything emerged from and all the biggest flower came right here, to a focal emphasis area where we're deciding where we want our viewer to see first. And obviously, of all the material that's here, the most intriguing is that Anthurium veitchii. I want them to see that. The full frontal view, the side view, all of it. And so that is definitely going to be the focal emphasis, to which then I design other material to just play with it, to interplay with it, so that we're always looking at whatever you put next to the main feature, so that it's always flattering and allowing people to contrast this to this, this to this, that to that. It's all about making your eyes travel exactly the way I planned it for them to see. And so, yeah, being mindful of what the focal emphasis, what that is, because if you don't do that, sadly, it could get covered up. And then you lose the main thing, the main show, because you got too much stuff in there. But just remember, that's what the beauty of these blocks are, these wood block structure, is there's only a few water tubes, and how many stems can you put in those? So it stops you, just like slaps your hand and say, no more, there's no more room in that water tube. And that's good, because there's a lot of us who don't know when to stop inserting. And so it's really a perfect one for corporate, because we often have not a big for a weekly, but you want to give them something stunning weekly that surprises them, that makes them so happy, because look at that, that is so cool. Everybody that's walking in that office is commenting on how cool that is. That's exactly the reputation one wants to establish for their business, and you as a florist. So are there any other questions? And did you see how fast that was? I mean, even though I was kind of rethinking it and trying to make something of where I was going, but I'm really quite happy with what I accomplished. All I have to do now is make sure those little ties are clipped off, because now that I'm looking at it closely, that is the mechanic that has to be finessed. So I'm going to clip those off so that it's really nice and neat. But what do you think about this? Any thoughts? Any comments? out there. Very dimensional.
Yeah, if there's any questions at all, just let us know in the comments. I know there's a slight delay, so if you have them, they'll be coming in soon.
Yeah, because if there's no further questions, then we'll kind of wrap it up. So if there's any questions, please let me know now. And if you have questions afterwards, after you even rewatch this and see how it was done, so then if you have questions beyond that, then by all means just put it in the comments so that I will see it and I'll be able to answer it.
Yeah, she's really good of answering questions in the comments. So yeah, if you think of something afterwards, feel free to comment in the video and we'll answer. We just have Christelle saying it's stunning. Jody Kennedy, I love it.
Good.
Good comments.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all of that. But you know what? Truly go look for some really cool material.
James Malloy says, I truly love it. It's like abstract art.
It is, but yet, you know what? There's a lot of people who hasn't developed appreciation for like abstract or very graphic or very modern, sleek, because they're still involved in the real lush gardening. Because we know that that is the area that the consumers are really loving, and that business of that is really, really strong. But to have that ability and a diversity to explore some of these other areas where it's not about the quantity of flowers, but it's really about the quality of how you design special quality flowers. So it's not about the number of material, but it's really about how it's presented. This is the way you can most capture the intrigue of botanicals, you know, by showing them something that they've not seen before. You know, it comes from the rainforests of the tropics, and they have not been exposed to it. I realized that that's where material like king protea has really risen from. Before, it wasn't seen enough, and of course it was such a big material that it wasn't used enough. But now people are so crazy about it, the brides want 2 of those in a bouquet. How crazy is that? I never thought that there would be a day when something as exotic and also big and heavy is in the mainstream and being asked for. But that's because people have become more comfortable with some of these interesting material, and they're looking for it. They're anxious to see something new every day. And so here's an opportunity that we can then, for ourselves, to be searching out there to look for something unusual and different. And just make sure that you don't cheapen it, because it is special and it's only available in small quantities, so you don't want to overuse it. Yes?
So we have a few more comments. Bruno says, fabuleux, merci. Yvette says, aloha.
Oh,
Louis
you have
says,
all languages.
is awesome. Jody says, looks like the bromeliad is peeking around the Anthurium veitchii.
That's exactly
And
the point.
it seems suspended and floating despite the strong base.
I love all of those comments.
And we also, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, you know, because the other thing that I want to emphasize is your skill and your knowledge to be able to build things that are magical. Because imagine this is a thing also that I love about like corporate work or installation work of any kind, because I may not want to already have this made and install it, especially when I know that if I could go to the corporate office and I could install it in person, because that's when they see the magic, and they do truly think of it as a magic. When you have a few things in a bucket and you come in with a bucket and a block with a few sticks coming out, and it becomes this. If anything that gives an indication of our talent is when they see it in person transform from something that looks like nothing to something that's amazing. That in itself usually helps clarify why you're worth $100 an hour, because they know that they can't do it. And they're charging, they're getting paid $40 an hour. So why would we as florists only charge less than that, like 20 or 15 for some of the people who have fallen behind way back when it comes to the pay scale. You know, we need to have a little bit more pride in what we do and recognize how special our artistry is. And so this is kind of part of what needs to happen. Let people see the magic. And that
Jody says maybe it's the contrast with the bass that magnifies the movement.
All the language is good. The verbiage is very good.
And Luis also says, thank you for sharing your knowledge in floral design.
It's a pleasure.
And
it really is.
I know Christelle asked a question a little while ago that I thought was a perfect segue to talk about something that you were going to talk about today. She asked, do you come to Europe? And although we can't travel right now, we are having Europe come to us and vice versa.
Yes.
Next month.
Yes.
So maybe you want to.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. I'll segue into that. So this basically wood works, working with a processed wood, piece of 4x4. I thought of this as an introduction to a seminar or a series of workshops that I am actually doing with Gregor Lersch.
Yeah, and I'll just bring up the picture here.
Yeah.
So if you want to just move a little bit because they can't see you.
Yeah. So, So I want to go here.
Yeah, there you go.
There we are. So yeah, there I am right there. So Gregor and I are doing a series of 3 lectures, presentation, demo, and it's called Wood Talks, Hands in Mind, so that we're going to be inspired by wood to create structures and then to flower it, to sort of seasonally appropriate to this time of the year, because we're seeing so much more wood now as the trees are shedding its leaves, and you're seeing more the character of the trees, the barks, the branches, the lichens on branches, because all of that is now disappearing with the coming of the winter. And he notices it, and I notice it, him in Germany, and myself in Canada, in Western Canada. And so we're getting together to regionally bring to you or any other people that's going to be participating to show our inspiration from wood in all different forms over the 3 lectures. And then we have actually 2 sessions in between, which are very interactive, where the students who are inspired, and this is not for every student, doesn't have to do it. If you feel like just watching and listening, that's fine. But if you are inclined to want to get your hands dirty and get into what is wood for you, then what we want is an inspired work based on the use of wood to build a structure and to flower. And we have a private group which is on Facebook, that is Elements of Inspiration, because that's really what our series, the whole series is revolves around. And so on that Facebook, everybody who wants to participate with design will post their design, and we will review all the design that's posted from that week. And on the first, in between the first and second session on the Thursday, Gregor and I will come on live again, and we'll review them and critique them. And then likewise between the second and third, except for on the Wednesday instead of on the Thursday, because the American Thanksgiving is on Thursday. So that's kind of how we scheduled it, so that we really have an interactive student-teacher relationship and conversations and discussion on the 2 weekdays in between, sandwich between the Saturdays, the 3 Saturdays.
Yeah, I'm sure some of you have already seen it, but we thought we would want to mention it here because it's a really cool program that's coming up next month. 5 virtual sessions live with Gregor and Hitomi, with a lot of discussion in between the sessions as well. We want to make it kind of a multi-week course so that there was a lot of interactive and engagement
and
between
actually
them and the students.
And actually to be able to absorb what's being said and what the inspiration is, and then for you to go outside and look for wood, to really kind of dig deep into what inspires you, and to be able to showcase that, not just for us to critique, but for everybody else to be inspired by more design that comes from the original inspirations. We just feel that the energy of sharing our ideas and the way our minds think to the students, and through the students back to everyone that's watching it, we think is what's been missing for both of us as we normally teach and do this in person, and that's not happening, so we want to make it happen for us. So we're really excited about it. But that's the topic, is wood. And so I thought I would just show this as a start of thinking wood.
Yeah,
and
one
how-
more thing. I forgot to mention this as we should have, but Crystal Viz asked where can we subscribe, and James Moy asked where can we find the sessions. And I'll just bring up that slide one more time. And you can find all the information and registration for the program at elementsofinspiration.com. And I'll write that in the chat as well. But if anybody out there is interested at all, check it out. And it kind of gives you a little bit more information of what it is. So yeah.
Yeah.
And you can always feel free to message Hitomi on Instagram or other social media, or here as well, if you have any further questions on the program.
Yeah, we would love to see you. We're really missing seeing people and working with people and teaching. So, we're doing everything we can. I mean, as you can see, with live, I just want to be teaching. And I don't know if you've been keeping up with Gregor, but he posts a design every day. I mean, I swear to you, the wellspring of inspiration in his head is just boiling over because he's got so many ideas to share. So this is a way we it's a little bit of what our outlet is, because we need to do it. We need to let go of a lot of these ideas so that we can feed in more into our heads. We need to create some space in that brain of ours. So anyway, so if you can join us, that would be great. But this is a good introduction to working with wood that I think is really kind of cool. So,
And what else is going on?
What else is
coming up?
What's coming up? I don't know.
Well, we have Creative Edge coming up next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of our monthly.
So for those of you who subscribe to Hitomi's YouTube channel, that will probably be the next series of videos that comes up on the channel beginning on the 1st. So keep an eye out for that.
Thanks. It's a good thing Colin's around, because he keeps us in the scheduling.
And as always, every month we will do these live streams the last Sunday of every month. We've been super busy this month, but we managed to squeeze this one in here. So
yeah,
because I know there's a lot of people that are looking forward to it, and we look forward to putting them on as well. So
yes. So thank you.
So everyone. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. And anything else to add?
And stay in touch, and we'll provide you with more education every month. Thank you.
Thank you.